following program is a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.
Mark Longo here from the Options Insider Radio Network and theoptionsinsider.com, and I'm breaking in to your regularly scheduled program to give you guys an update on our Options Insider educational series. Now, a lot of you guys have been asking us when we're going to do something else like our groundbreaking Unusual Activity Forum that we held back in May at the CBOE. Well, mark your calendars for December 7th, because we're diving right back into the educational fray with an epic event on that Saturday, December 7th. We're going to break down the retail options trading landscape with 3 seminars held in partnership with our friends over there at optionpit.com. We'll break down the key mistakes that cost retail traders real money in the real trading marketplace, as well as how to properly implement and manage and adjust some really critical strategies like debit spreads, credit spreads, collars, risk reversals, butterflies, covered calls, the whole 9 yards. And best of all, this is going to be an online event, so you can join us from the comfort of your own home in your favorite bunny slippers. Don't miss this epic educational extravaganza with 3 seminars from 3 of the leading names in the business. Reserve your seat today at theoptionsinsider.com/events. And now I'll return you to your regularly scheduled program.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, and co-hosts Mike Tusaw from KnowYourOptionsInc.com and Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express. Don't spend time worrying about your broker. At Options Express, security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures, all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio to open your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Option Block. We are, of course, your bi-weekly source for all things options related. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as a little thing we like to call around here, the Options Insider Radio Network. You may have heard of it. We kind of like it. And hopefully you're liking it because you're listening to it right now. And joining us, it's like the old, Palomalo commercial. You're soaking in it right now. All right, the Sebastian were here, he'd jump all over that. All right, and speaking of Sebastian, he's not here, but his better half, his counterpart, his partner in crime, his indeed hetero life mate, is joining us today, none other than the Rock Lobster himself, good old Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Mr. Rock Lobster, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thank you. I'm still trying to get over the hetero life mate thing. I don't know exactly what that is.
That doesn't say that on your business card?
Exactly.
Chief Educational Officer and hetero life mate.
And hetero life mate. Yes, Mr. Sebastian is, I think, he is vacationing and supping in the grand environs of Detroit this week.
I was going to say, he's a Detroit guy, so he gets to go to lovely, scenic, bankrupt Detroit. Maybe he'll buy half the city while he's there. I hear it's going really cheap.
Apparently. You just have to take all the debts. Other than that, you get some nice real estate.
Yeah, not a bad deal. Maybe I'll go up there on Thanksgiving myself and scoop up a few blocks and see what I can do with it.
I have to say, the contrarian in me thinks that had gotten so ugly there will be some sort of resurgence there at some point. And Detroit will be the buying opportunity of the century.
Yeah, like 25 years from now, we'll look back at it and say, why didn't I buy half of downtown Detroit?
The problem is we'll all be too old to care about spending the money by then. So
speak for yourself, sir. I just turned 18 last week. But, of course, I think the carry cost and the carry term on that may be a little longer than any of us want to hold a lot of Detroit land for. All right, and here's some heavy breathing, which means we are joined by the man of fancy hats, a.k.a. the Viceroy, none other than Alex Jacobson from Options Express. Alex, welcome back to the program, sir.
Hey, Mark. Good day. Good to be here today.
Easy for you to say, sir.
Yeah, after the hetero thing, I'm trying to figure that out myself. But I've had those suspicions, so let's move forward from there. The energy market was what lit up the tape today, and it was exiting from energy. They murdered the oils and oil service, with the exception of Exxon, which is clearly getting buoyed by the fact that Mr. Buffett bought it.
All right, sir. Good teases for the trading block. I don't want to use up all your good material right now, so we'll save some of it for a few minutes while I introduce our final partner in crime here, someone else who I think is also considering a move to Detroit and probably could be called hetero life mates with Mr. Kavanaugh as well. I don't know how they break that down over there. None other than good old Uncle Mike Tusaw from RCM Wealth Advisors and Asset Management. Mr. Tusaw, welcome back to the show, sir.
Always happy to be here. Happy to be amongst hetero life mates.
That's what you guys all get for having partners in your businesses. I have none, so therefore I have no hetero life mates. I'm a sad, sad fellow as a result. And before we go down that rabbit hole any further, I think we'll keep on going right on into the trading block.
The trading block.
I don't think I've ever been more thankful for the trading block bells than I was just then. We were literally saved by the bell. Of course, welcome to the trading block. This is the portion of the program where we break down what was going on the old street today, what was lighting up our tape from a collective options expertise point of view. And on the broad indices today was a relatively mild day as expected. Not much going on. Most of the major indices essentially unched. They were down a little bit going throughout most of the session, down fraction of the day, most of the major indices. We caught a little bit of a tailwind towards the end of the session. Most of the major indices closing up fractionally on the day, except for the S&P. The little bit of the laggard today down fractionally, but nothing really to speak of. Half of a point diving back in to the VIX cash. And perhaps there's a little bit to go on there just because we talked how on the last show people were just drubbing the vol across the board, and it seemed like we only have jokingly said they had already rolled past Thanksgiving and they were rolling to Christmas now, and New Year's was on the menu in short order. Looks like they put a little bit of that back today, but perhaps not a lot. Is that your take as well, Mr. Andrew?
Yeah, I think there was a little weekend that got put back in, but that's about it. I mean, I think you're going to see cash will drop a bunch tomorrow. The VIX cash will drop a bunch tomorrow as well. So, as far as this week goes, I mean, we're looking like they could take the vol. We could see volatility down up into the 11 handle again by Friday. That's my official guesstimate, which we all know what opinions are worth, but that feels like kind of where it's going if we don't get any any news out of this Iran thing, or Israel decides just to say, well, we're not going to negotiate anymore. We're just going to end the negotiation now. So that type of thing can always happen. But as far as pull on volatility right now, the direction is still south, as low as it is. So.
Yeah, not too many buyers floating in there. Even though we mentioned on the last show, and we'll probably get into it a little bit again here later today, that there are some opportunities starting to show up in the marketplace to get some cheap juice and perhaps do some stuff. I know a lot of our listeners like to just blast out that bid, but hey, maybe you flip that script going into this weekend. Might be some good opportunities for that. Of course, actually, before we get into that, maybe we'll jump back a little bit as well, because Alex, you said something that was kind of surprising to me at the top of the show. You kind of figure it was a relatively light day across the board. You would think it would be a relatively light day over there at OX as well. A lot of your clients having already departed for their weekend holidays. I should remind our listeners yet again, for all of you guys who ask for the dates, we are recording this on Monday, November 25th here. So use that in whatever calculations you may. But Mr. Alex, it sounded like it was actually a fairly active day over there in the hallowed halls of OX.
Yeah. I coming in today, I would have bet it would have been quieter than it was, and obviously it wasn't driven by the broad market, but there were a couple themes going on today, and clearly energy was impacted by what was going on in the negotiations about the Iran nuclear program. A couple of other things were going on today. We saw some Hail Mary stuff in the VIX. We saw some long-dated out-of-the-money stuff trading. I mean, really out-of-the-money stuff trading, which, again, was a little surprising. The other big theme here today, which was interesting, is social networking. We talked a couple days back about how Twitter wasn't really trading a lot. Twitter is starting to trade now, and Facebook is starting to trade, and most of the paper here has been negative. People who think the stocks are going to get beaten up, and they've been right so far. The other theme here today, which is kind of unusual, was J.P. Morgan. The stock had gotten beaten up, and today it was taking out the highs. So it was, kind of a mixed day in terms of, energy getting hurt and other stuff kind of rallying, but it wasn't as quiet today as I would have expected, which is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely a good thing when the transactions are the lifeblood of the business. When people aren't taking their ball and going home, but actually staying to play a little bit longer, that's a good thing. Have you noticed, it's kind of hard to parse all that flow, obviously. We talked on the last show, like I said, Alex, about people or them continuing to crush this vol. Have you noticed any of the OX clientele starting to maybe taking advantage of that and start to position on the other side and actually buy some stuff going into the weekend, or are they still just blasting out weeklies at a record pace?
Well, I don't see all the paper by the time we do the show. I just kind of hear what the trading desks have interacted with, and VIX has gotten to be a very active product in the last few weeks in terms of my survey of the desk. And what we saw today was a lot of out-of-the-money stuff trading and a lot of long-dated stuff trading out in May, stuff trading in the funny stuff, 30s and 40 strikes. So I consider those kind of Hail Marys or, someone who's making a fairly aggressive bet on vol popping back. So, but it just wasn't as quiet. And I think part of the issue is, at least on the e-commerce side, and I know this is going to sound like an advertisement, it's the ability now to trade off mobile devices that it doesn't get that quiet, because people now can trade, from the back seat of a car, or they can trade from, on the road to grandma's house. So it didn't drop off as much as I would have thought.
I'm just looking here while we're talking, and you're right, there was a lot of Hail Mary paper floating into the upside on VIX. We saw 650 of the Feb 50s going up today. Of course, that's about the open interest, too, so maybe someone was giving up the ghost there. We saw about 700 of the Jan 45s going up, and then rolling a little bit closer to home. We saw 1,000 each of the Dees 27s, 29s, and 30s all going up today. Of course, on Dees, you got a lot more open interest, about 30,000 open on each of those strikes, except for the Dees 30s, which have 96,000 contracts open interest. There's some size paper still open there on the Dees 30 strike, and perhaps they were adding to that today. I guess into open interest, we're going to get into that a little bit later in the mail block, but interesting stuff. You're right. Some people definitely throwing some flyers out there in VIX land today, Alex.
Yep, a lot of that, even out into May. So it was kind of interesting to observe some of that today.
And Mr. Tusaw, while you were out there enjoying the rural tranquility known as scenic and lovely St. Charles, Illinois, what else caught your eye in today's activity? What was keeping the BBI low today?
Yeah, there really wasn't a lot in my world. The metals were fairly flat. Apple was fairly flat. I did close out a position on Apple. I just took some profits on a put spread that we were short. But with that, really was not a lot. Curious to see if we get some type of a surprise move this week. I personally hate weeks like this. This week and the week between Christmas and New Year's are 2 weeks that I'm really not too keen on, because you got to put a lot of effort. I have to put just as much effort into weeks like that with not quite as much reward typically. So looking forward to when we get through these holidays and we can start trading again. By gosh, why do people need to rest? Can't we just trade 7 days a week?
So you weren't just scooping up some Twitter on the downside today for all the clients.
I should have. Staying away from that.
What fun is it if you're not diving into at least a few IPOs? Just to keep the old blood pumping.
My blood pumps very well. If I want to keep my blood pumping, I'll do something called option trading. That's more fun.
All right, and last up, Mr. Andrew, I wouldn't be a trading block if I didn't give you a chance to rub it in a little bit and gloat here on just the endless upside we're seeing in Zynga these days. I know you were a big fan of risk reversals. You switched to strangles. What's the deal? Are you just long a ton of stock now because you love it so badly?
What's
the
weird
deal?
is I sold out everything last week. So I don't know what to do in there.
You're not enjoying the additional run up another 2.5% today?
I'm just thinking what to do, really. I don't know. I
figured you'd be moving to that palatial seaside resort in Maine now after this recent run up here in Zynga.
Well, as far as the run up goes, and it's weird because there's no real news. I think the fact that there was that Supercell or something like that was bought by SoftBank. One of those, kind of a Zynga-like. They do Clash of the Titans or whatever, Clash of the Clans. Essentially the same kind of game action that Zynga has, and somebody actually paid for the company, paid for the goodwill. So, and that guy's usually pretty smart, so I think there's been some piggybacking on that. And Zynga's actually trying to become a company, cut costs and all those things. But the only problem for me is like the top line still is not great. I just thought it was always more of an asset play when it got super cheap. So right here, I have to say like the risk reversal, 4.5 type risk reversal, or 5.4 risk reversal going out a little bit does not look too bad as a way to get on board, shall we say? But yeah, it's definitely a no complaints.
Wow, you're really drinking the Kool-Aid these days. 4.5. That's you were hemming and hawing about the 3 and 3.5 strike not too long ago.
It was originally the 2.5 strike.
you changed your outlook considerably, sir.
It was the 2.5 too. We got about a year ago.
Crazy business, sir.
Crazy business, up 100% from there. What are you going to do?
All right, speaking of crazy business, it is time for everyone to put on their hats in the audience because it is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, that funky tune means it is time once again to don your fedora and join us over here on the dark side of the options business as we take a walk through some of the interesting options activity that was lighting up our tape today. We had a whole bunch prepped, ready to go here. You can, of course, find it all on theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the unusual activity tab to read a lot more about these alerts and all the ones we don't have time to get to on the old show. But Alex kind of got us off on a tangent, a good tangent, actually, in the trading block because we were starting to parse in the little break between the segments there some of the other flow going up out there in VIX land, and we came across this just massive block that I think we really need to take a couple seconds to discuss. We talked a lot about some crazy call buying out there in VIX. I just outlined a few smaller interesting trades going on the upside in VIX, but we saw someone really piling into Hail Mary territory. We saw 23,424 of the May 30s going up today on open interest of just 1,500 contracts. So all open in paper. Someone really lighting up the tape out here in VIX land. It doesn't look like an override. It looks like someone is gobbling up upside. Is that your take as well, Signor Giovinazzi?
That is my take. This is like, and it's kind of scattered fills. I'm just looking at time and sales. Took a couple minutes, 3, 4, 5, 8 minutes, to kind of buy all these calls up. So, somebody was definitely paying up for them. Maybe it is scattered buyers. Not quite sure if it's all one buyer, but it kind of feels like one that was just trying to get it all done. But May 30, that's the old somebody wants to position themselves for the what is it? I think it's now the quarterly government shutdown, I believe is what we're going to have.
Yes, the
run our
rolling
government
shutdown
by,
trade.
And just look for one. I'm just trying to see if there's going to be anything left of those May 30s by the time we get there, because those are DK sensitive, I would say.
Yeah, they closed today 65 cents at 70, so they traded somewhere in that range through most of the session.
All the volume was like 69.70 mostly. So
he was paying up to get that done.
They sure were, and I don't know. I didn't know if there was balanced against anything, but that's somebody looking for 35 VIX, like meltdown, and that's in my little back of the envelope VIX indicator, like once you're into the 30s in VIX, that is tends to be kind of like a structural economic issue. It's not just, whatever, nuclear accident in Japan or something like that. It tends to be more where you're really looking for disaster, like, more like a Euro meltdown, or maybe it could be Japanese bond meltdown or something. Who knows? But that's the type of activity that drives the VIX to 30. So somebody is looking somewhere over the horizon and trying to, basically thinking we're going to have a different market than we have today, which obviously is always possible.
Yeah, this one definitely going in the to be watched category. We got some time for this guy to hopefully do some stuff with his 70 cents to make it worth his while. I don't know how much scalping you can really do out here in VIX land. But you're right, it kind of is the inverse of what we used to say out in the SPX land. People used to blast out, let's say, the 600 strike puts in the SPX all day, or 500 strike, because they'd say, hey, if we get down there, we got a whole lot of other things to worry about aside from paying for these puts. This is kind of the opposite of that argument. You need something like that to really make these May 30s really start kicking in and generating some juice to the old portfolio.
Right. And this could be like a swan fund type, like a black swan type trade, where they're going to start with a call buy on the May 30s, and then they might sell a lot more juice forward. Although this is pretty late, I would think. But that is kind of the trades where you buy kind of out of the money calls, then you sell more in the money calls on a ratio, and try to generate some theta that way. I'm not really seeing the volume on the other side of the equation, so to speak, on this one.
Alex, you said you guys had some Hail Marys going on in OX today. Did you guys have any of this paper, this massive May 30 buying fest, any of that go up at OX?
A little bit of it. Yeah. And, I don't know what goes on electronically till much later, but I heard some of what was going on the desk today, and there was multiple Hail Mary trades going on here, but I don't have any sense of what the logic was, or what the justification was, or what they were trading against it. If I had to guess, I would suspect this is going to come out sounding really strange, and I'm guessing at this. Let me emphasize that I'm guessing at this. This coincides with what was going on in the energy markets today, and I'd want to look at what the first dates were for some of this Iran nuclear oversight, and when the cutoff dates are. But I know that's a reach.
You saying there's John Kerry coming in, picking up some upside in VIX, just in case his efforts come to naught?
Well, he's got the dough to do it.
Yeah, that's true. And there was some dubious activity in Heinz back in the day, as you recall, in the option. So I wouldn't put this past him.
I recalled nothing, I saw nothing, and I remember nothing.
Okay, Senator. All right, next up, switching gears a little bit, going from the heavily watched, heavily anticipated VIX to another name, perhaps a little bit slightly lower on the anticipated scale. This is, of course, Ziopharm Oncology Inc. This is one of our odd block specials. Ticker symbol ZIOP, Z-I-O-P. Closing today, having a pretty decent day out here in ZIOP territory. It looks like up about 28 cents, or about 7.5% to close nearly $4, $3.94. And it looks like someone's betting that the party ain't over just yet. We saw someone piling in. When the time we wrote this, we saw about 3,500 of the DC5s going up for about 13 cents. The buying frenzy continued and the underlying rally continued throughout the day. So by the end of the day, we saw about 6,400 of the DC5s have gone up, and that price has now been bid up to, they went out 20 at 25. So this guy's already looking pretty good just through the strength of his own buying activity and a little bit of the run up on the stock. Open interest, just 300 plus contracts. So this is all open in paper. A lot of that early stuff went up in pretty much one block. That was lifting the offer, a little bit printing the dime before the rest going up 13 cents. And then as the day wore on, they started getting progressively higher prices, as you might imagine. This is a substantial upside bet. It's got to be about a quarter of 25% or so, really, to make this trade pay off. This is the kind of paper you see a lot in these biotechs. And yes, Ziopharm Oncology is indeed a biotech company. They do gene expression and control technology. I'm just going to go out on a limb here, Andrew, and say they have some sort of FDA approval or some other thing cooking in the near term.
That's what it feels like.
Certainly what it feels like.
What's very interesting is like the vol skew, like from the DC4-5 is 24 points. So you can buy the 4-5 call spread probably for 20 cents, I think, on this thing, or less. Or you can buy the 5s for 25 cents now. So,
yeah, 20 if you're lazy about it. You probably do a little better, yeah.
Yep. So, somebody came in and bid these things up. Volatility's up 20 points, and we're off to the races. Now, what's interesting, too, is the Jan vol's a little higher than the December. So I think the DC is more of kind of a crapshoot as far as maybe an early announcement goes with the bid in January. So the DC might all turn out to be a big nada. And you might actually be able to finance your January by buying some DC. So it's, you could time spread this. There are a couple of ways to do it, but obviously would be a very speculative play on when this biotech announcement is going to come out.
Finance your jam by selling some DC. That's what.
Yes, exactly.
That would be an easier way to go than I think buying the DC to finance your jam. Even though you could do that too if you were very clever.
As long as you got the day exactly right.
Yes, exactly. So if you're one of the more, let's say, intrepid of our listeners and you don't mind being some short gamma into potentially a very aggressive announcement, then that might be a potential play for you. I know, Andrew, you couldn't make it to our big unusual activity extravaganza that we had back in May, but one of the things I discussed in my opening remarks was some of the data we have on this. There aren't too many studies on this, but they have done some studies on expected announcements versus unexpected announcements, like things like earnings reports that everyone knows are coming up, and the option flow around that versus the option flow around surprise, quote-unquote, announcements, like surprise earnings, guidance lowering and things like that, surprise drug announcements. And they found that the spike in option flow is actually dramatically more around the surprise, quote-unquote, type event. So perhaps this falls into that latter category of there is something lurking on the horizon, and this is someone positioning ahead of that. Or you're right, it is a relatively cheap spec. They could have their time frame off, in which case they could be they wouldn't be that adversely affected. They had to roll out to Jan as well. Not that much on the line, but certainly some. Certainly one to keep an eye on too. We're going to mark this Ziopharm because it looks like someone is betting that they're prepped for a pop. Looking back here on the chart. Wasn't too long ago, just back about a month ago, they were trading above the 5 handle. They hit 5.10. Actually, they hit 5.25 at one point. So this is recent history for them. It wouldn't be completely out of line to see these options trading worth. Of course, if they hit their highs again, these options are about barely breaking even. So this guy is being a wee bit aggressive, both in time frame and a little bit of premium here. Interesting to see how this works out. Of course, for you listeners, like we said, a lot of great ways to perhaps leg into some verticals. And for the few, I would say, very intrepid out there of you who want to maybe leg into some time spreads, that might be an opportunity as well. But indeed, beware the gamma monster, lest it come back to bite you. All right, we're going to wrap things up here in the old odd block today with Titan International Inc., ticker symbol TWI, closing at a very expensive, from a comparative odd block point of view, $17.09, up about $1 or 6.5% today. So good times going on out here in TWI as well. This is a manufacturer of wheels and tires. They do a whopping 375 contracts a day, doing 2,200. It looks like the bulk of the activity today out in Titan International came on the Dees 17.5 strike, where we saw a whopping, the number of the devil, 666 going up total on this strike for prices around 30 to 50 cents. They went up in small increments, it seems like, throughout most of the day. And looks like people were just pretty much, except for the opening where they were kind of lifting some offers. Looks like some very immediate, again, looks like some immediate near-term upside specs. You see about 300 of the Dees 20s going up as well. Maybe someone trying to get a little bit of a vertical on out there as well. That your take, Senior Lobster?
Yeah, Senior Lobster says just some people buying calls in this thing. I guess it's kind of an old school industrial type stock. They make tires and whatnot. But, that's paper, pan, and nickel. And it's like, okay, is this like one of those possible earning, what's his name? William Buffett type buyouts, he takes the sleepy company that's trading for, 10 times earnings and buys it. So I don't know. It's just the paper is feeling, that's pretty bullish paper for a stock that trades at an 18 volatility. You're buying the 17.5 calls and the Dees 20 calls.
Oh, so those are buys. Those are buys on both.
It's not a lot of volume, but it's significant because of how little this stock normally really moves.
So that was a two-saw ratio stupid going up there, buying the 17.5s and the 20s.
Tailor-made to keep the BBI, low.
Yes, nothing you can do on that once you put that on, except watch it decay to zero. All right. Another one I think we're going to file in the to be watched. You got a lot of interesting near-term ones to keep an eye on here in the next couple of weeks to see what's going on out here in Dees, if our friends here know something or if perhaps they're just taking flyers. Either way, we'll keep an eye on them and check back in later in the month. But now it's time to keep on rolling with the show with check in with the Viceroy, because it's time for the Xpress Block.
The Express Block, brought to you by Options Express. Options Express lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources, Options Express is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express allows you to trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-to-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com/OXradio for your free account. Options Express is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, listeners, you know him, you love him. He is the Viceroy, and it's time for him to put on his jaunty cap and take us behind the scenes over there at OX. Now, Alex, you gave us a taste at the top of the show, and there's some interesting stuff cooking over there in OX land today. Of course, you had energies, you had the oil services, lighting up the tape. Of course, those crazy VIX out of the money calls, some of that filtering through at OX. And you even had some people filtering into social media over there at Twitter and Facebook. So it seemed like a lot lighting up the old tape at OX today.
Yeah, and the character of the trade today was curious as well. As I mentioned, our clientele has been fairly negative on social media, which means they've been right, because both Facebook and Twitter got beat up today. But a lot was going on today seemed to be driven by events out of the Mideast and the desk, especially when I sort of lean across the aisle and call out, "Hey, Mike, what was going on in futures today?" Across the aisle. Very scientific process Mike and I have. It's called shout. Energy obviously had a tough day. The interesting thing, he said the contract that got beat up the most was the contract that I didn't even know existed, and that's the ethanol contract. And as soon as you mention that, you kind of cipher that up and say, well, that makes sense, because if there's going to be an abundance of oil coming out of the ground, if the Iranian oil is going to come back into the marketplace and that whole thing works itself out, then the cost of making ethanol again becomes prohibitive. And that contract, as Mike said, our head of futures said, really got beaten up today. But the whole oil group and oil service group got hammered today. I mean, Schlumberger down 3, ConocoPhillips down a little bit off $2. As I said before, the only exception was Exxon. And the only thing I can figure out with Exxon is the fact that, Buffett's been buying it and it's had some trade lift from that. And it seems that with Buffett an owner, it's got a support level. It's got we used to call the Bernanke put. It looks like there might be the Warren Buffett put in Exxon, but the tone was good today. Much busier than I would have expected, and as I say, it's going to be interesting when I talk to the product development people to see on a week like this how much is coming in off of mobile, because mobile has become a real viable alternative. A year and a half back when we introduced mobile, or we got aggressive in mobile, a lot of it was still people were going to mobile for quotes, but still going to a desktop or a laptop to trade. What's going on now is people are trading from mobile. They're trading from smartphones. They're trading from iPads. And as I said, they'll probably be trading, Friday, one eye on football and one eye on a pad to trade. So good tone today.
It's interesting because I've been talking to a lot of brokers lately, as we are wont to do here at Insider. And, the narrative I've been hearing on mobile is that, clients are all over it. They're using it. Their percentages are up across the board in terms of how many clients are actually logging in via mobile, a lot of them sometimes exclusively. And yet it seems like they're still using that kind of older use case of their checking accounts, and they aren't doing as much. The actual, I guess, trade to login ratio is still kind of much lower on mobile than it is on the desktop. Maybe that also speaks maybe to the robustness of some of those platforms where they can't do as much. Sounds like you're saying the clients are logging in and they're not just checking the tea leaves. They're actually trading a lot and using the OX tools on the mobile platform.
Yeah, I'll the product development people, I see numbers kind of every month. But, part of this is a sea change, and part of it is mobile devices with bigger screens, lots more high speed. But, a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, when mobile was first introduced, people used it for quotes. And the feedback we got, Mark, was very similar. I'm not going to trade on a mobile device. I'm not going to trade on my iPhone or my Galaxy. I'm just too insecure about, is the trade going to get done? Will I see the fill? People on mobile are now trading on mobile to a much larger degree. And let's say I'll get the numbers, and maybe one show coming up the road, we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, that would be fascinating, because it is interesting to see how the audience is evolving. And you're right. In addition to the tools you guys are offering, the platforms they're using are evolving. They're getting bigger screens. It's getting much easier to do this stuff than it was a few years ago. And especially on a big tablet, you can sit down and really do almost all the same stuff you could do on a laptop or on a desktop now. So that certainly has paved the way as well. Yeah, that'd be great to maybe dive into some of those metrics and see exactly where the OX clientele logs in from and what they're doing when they're logging into that different stuff. But, of course, we have to keep on rolling with the show right now, because it's time, speaking of the listeners and the clients, it's time for you guys to make your voices heard, because it's time for the mail block.
Now it's time to empty the mailbag and see what our listeners have to say. It's the mail block.
All right, everybody, it's time for my favorite part of the show. Don't tell Tusaw the Viceroy. I like their parts too, but I really like this part because it gives you guys a chance to sound off and make your voices heard here and become a de facto member of the All-Star panel. First up, we have an interesting question from Mr. Allan Schwartz. I'm surprised we haven't gotten this one before, actually. He writes, why is open interest still... I'm assuming this is only updated daily. Don't we have enough information now to update that more frequently, if not instantly? If I buy to close 30 calls, that should be reflected in the OI instantly, not the following morning. Thanks, Alan. Well, Alan, you make a good point, actually. This is something we hear every now and then from various listeners to the shows and readers of our website. Hey, we have all this other data that's going out on an almost instantaneous basis, quotes, messaging, trades, volume, all this stuff. Yet we still have this ridiculous lagging indicator in OI and open interest. We even say this on this show. Hey, we're talking about some alerts right now. We're recording this on the 25th. You have to check tomorrow to really see the full the full effect, and we don't even know all the time what's going on with the open interest. We have to wait till the next day to really see this stuff play out in the marketplace. And you're right, we do have a lot faster systems and processing. I used to be, in the old quote unquote days, not that long ago, 10, 15 years ago, you'd do some trades, you get an out trade run in the middle of the day, you'd have to have your clerk go check it, and maybe by the end of the day you'd check some out trades, and it'd be a many hour gap between when you traded and when the actual trades were processed and when they were cleared, and when you got your out trade reports, and the next day you have to go to all again. Now a lot of that is done instantaneously. They're matching trades instantaneously. They're doing a lot of that out trade report. If you enter something wrong, you're going to get a kickback really quickly that, hey, you have an out trade with someone else. So we have a lot more of that data instantaneously. But yet, at the end of the day, the clearing side of the business still rooted in, shall we say, some of the older tendencies. We're seeing some updates and modifications to that now. We're seeing, of course, things like dividend trades, which are a complete exploit of the clearing process and the way it works, that being taken into the modern era. I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing something done on this front. Maybe not anything soon, but someday down the road where we have a little bit more ability to update these things. Maybe not instantaneously, because it's hard to do that with all the clearing backlog we have and the latency that still is built into that essentially one-day clearing process. But perhaps on a more hour-by-hour basis, something like that, where we can get a little bit more insight. Because you're right. Right now, the open interest number, not as useful as it potentially could be. And we are getting to that point where I think the technology has caught up to this problem. And we potentially could maybe tackle this issue down the road. Mr. Andrew, what's your take on daily open interest? I know it's a frustrating factor for you, too. You're doing the alerts every day, and it's always like, well, wait and see till tomorrow,
Yeah, it's just, the thing is, if trading in a pit, you used to know who was opening and closing. But that is definitely kind of a lost. It's a little bit lost now because of one-day clearing and the fact you just can't see it. So frustrating. Would it be nice if that open interest sort of popped up and jumped up and down and did a dance for you? Yes, but I predict of all the things the industry has to do, it will be a while.
Here, I'm going to answer the question with a question. Both Andrew and Mark, you were market makers. I know I get accused of having traded on the floor. I was never a market maker, but did you guys mark your tickets open or closed? Did the exchanges even collect that information from you?
I never did.
For me as a market maker, broker tickets did come up with opening or closing.
Right. So that's the problem. And unfortunately, I share Allan's frustration. Open interest in the securities industry, and if you ask three people, you'll get three different answers. And I'm not sure anybody ever understands this. And I worked at two exchanges, and I asked the guy at OCC who does this, and here's the answer. Because market makers don't mark their tickets, if it were all customer, open interest is gross customer, net market maker. And by the way, as soon as I say that, I'll get 100 emails saying you don't know what you're talking about. But here's the problem OCC has. If it were all OX customers or other customers, the tickets are marked open or close. Market makers don't mark their tickets. So if a market maker in a crowd trades with a market maker in the crowd, is open interest created? And the answer is you don't know. Because if market maker 1 buys from market maker 2, and market maker 2 had open interest, you just transfer it. So the problem is the market maker.
I think
there aren't any market makers anymore.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
That should get rid of that problem.
And they can only do that after the close.
They've paid for their sins.
Yeah, well, but there are still market makers. And the thing is, as far as I know, and it's been 3 years since I worked at an exchange, the exchange doesn't collect open-close information from the dealer community, from the liquidity provider community. So you got to net that number at night. And OCC does it at, I forget if it's 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. For all customers, it would be easy. I totally agree. The problem is you don't collect it from market makers, and you don't know. You simply don't know. If a market maker trades in the crowd with another market maker, or trades electronically with another market maker, or trades across platforms with another market maker, you don't know if open interest has been created till after the close. And that's the frustration, and I don't know a solution.
Once again, Alex, throwing cold water on all of our joyous optimism here.
The geek does it again.
But, I think...
And here, make it worse,
okay.
It's different in futures than it is in securities. They calculate open interest differently, and I have no sense of how they do it, even though it's been explained to me repeatedly.
I think we should just add a little checkbox to all the market makers so they have to check on each trade whether it's opening or closing. I'm sure they would respond favorably to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure market makers wouldn't gain.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
checkbox.
Oh, this is pure closing. Why not? I could see a lot of that going on. Unfortunately,
no, it would never happen.
Yeah, exactly. So unfortunately, technology may be there, but you're right. That last little component there of the market makers is a bit of a thorny issue to resolve. Maybe we'll do a customer open interest update and then leave the bulk of it to the end of the day. Who knows? All kinds of fun stuff we can do with that. But yeah, you're right. At least it seems like for the bulk of us here, nothing's changing anytime soon, even though I think we all agree with you, Alan, that we would love to see it. Next up, Mr. Bizman, he writes, this is for you, Alex, because I don't know the answer to this one. Does OX offer any systems to automate trading? For example, automatically write a 5% out-of-the-money call on XYZ underlying every month or week, etc. That would save some hassle for busy clients. And that's interesting, and I know you guys, automated trading is getting big for a lot of your firms like you guys at OX, but that usually has to do with the newsletter side. People subscribe to a particular automated trading service, and their accounts are automatically executed for those trades. I don't. Maybe you know something I'm not aware of, Alex, but I don't know of anything that really fits the bill that he's describing here.
Yeah, again, I'm going to get the downer hat. There is nothing, and it isn't the automated issue. It's a compliance issue. Your comment about automated trading, at one time that was a big business at most brokerage houses, maybe 7 or 8% of their volume. And the regulatory environment is such that we got out of that business. And it's more related to legal and what's a solicited trade, but it's a legal headache, and it doesn't exist at this time.
Yeah, there's a lot that would go into that calculation. Of course, you said the compliance aspect and making sure all that is above board before the trade is executed. I'm sure ahead of time margin requirements, taking into account what positions you have on now versus what you'll have at expiration, so whether you can do this trade again. There's a lot that would go into that. So I think this sounds like another one that it would be nice. Certainly would be nice to have this, as well as to have, updated open interest on a regular basis. Unfortunately, the realities of the marketplace, and indeed the Viceroy himself, like to throw cold water on all these fun suggestions you, our listeners, have.
I have a great solution to that. Hire a money manager.
There you go. And then
who specializes in retail option clients.
If only I knew someone who could do that. You can make any recommendations, Uncle Mike?
Yeah, but this guy, he lives out in the sticks, so I don't know if I would want to deal with him.
Yeah, that's true. And he had that one phone line the whole town shares, so it's kind of hard to get access to him.
He keeps saying they're going to get running water one of these days, though.
And he has those bottles of his own, BBI hanging around him all day long. I'm not sure if that's the kind of guy you really want managing your money.
But, Mike, in all seriousness, as an RIA, you could, in fact, do that for a client, right?
We do that very frequently.
Yep.
There's a lot of clients that have set parameters with it. We have discretion on the account, obviously, but we set it up as kind of a working discretion to where if this is what you're looking for, we can work with this.
And you actually enter that trade manually. You have to actually put the trade in. You don't automate it, so it just kicks out every month.
Correct. Yeah, we're a hands-on approach.
In that sense, Mike is the automation. I like it. So yeah, there you go, Mr. Bizman. Contact Uncle Mike and our friends over at RCM, and they could do this for you. They could implement that, and you could set up all your little rotating trades till your heart's content. Out of the money calls, out of the money puts, iron condors, ratios, whatever the case. Actually, go crazy and complex. Make Uncle Mike work for his money. Don't give him simple covered calls. Anyone could do that. Make him do some iron condor ratio swaps and some fun stuff like that, and be very demanding in your limits, and make it a little more fun.
Sounds good.
Some Botafucos.
Yeah, there we go.
The Botafuco. Okay, that's a new one. I don't know the Botafuco trade.
It was in Barron's. I'll tell you that story one day.
Okay.
All right, that is going to do it for the mail block. Great questions, everybody, and now we're going to keep on rolling right on into our final segment, Around the Block.
Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. This is, of course, the portion of the program where we peer ahead for what's coming down, what we're keeping on our screens for the rest of this week. As you mentioned at the top of the show, it is a shortened week here in the U.S. as we all prepare to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday. So markets closed on Thursday, half day on Friday, as you might expect, as we talked about in the last episode. The market makers taking their ball and going home a little bit early, squeezing the juice out of most of these names. A little bit of a pop back coming in this morning, just a little bit, but already it's starting to come back out again, and we're seeing Thanksgiving pretty much being squeezed out of these markets very, very early, in spite of what's going on with Iran and everything else. So bear that in mind. Just be cognizant. We know you guys love to blast out your weeklies. We know you guys love to do your premium selling type strategies, but there are scenarios where that is not perhaps appropriate, where the risk is simply not worth the reward. You're just taking on risk for very little in terms of reward. So if that's the case for you, if you're looking and it's like, well, maybe should I pull the trigger on this? Is this really worth my time and the risk I'm doing? Maybe it's a better time to start looking at the other side of that fence, and perhaps you get some juice, maybe not for free, but for some appreciably low levels. And speaking of free juice, Mr. Giovinazzi, what are you watching for the rest of this week? What is catching your eye in the free juice land?
Besides going out and grabbing some clams and oysters, and get like oyster and clam juice. To be honest, I just, with vol this low, it's kind of like time spreads. That's sort of the free juice thing. But really looking past this week, I think the volatility is just too cheap to sell for this weekly cycle. And we have looking at some time spreads for sort of Jan Dees. Look like some of them are setting up for kind of interesting prices. So that's what essentially we've been looking at. We actually have no position in the vol products, none. We closed the last short vol trade today for our strategy letter, so we're kind of letting it. Nothing's really looking real interesting there. So I just kind of good old fashioned time spreads in the financials. For whatever reason, that sector is starting to look better. Maybe Alex, he's always good at this stuff, but I think it's mostly the possibility of higher interest rates. Maybe banks can start making some money again. Something on that, because I've noticed it's been a fairly strong sector here going into the end of the year. The time spreads have performed really well as a way to get along those trades. So,
all right, thank you for that, Andrew. And Mr. Tusaw, what's cooking in the land of RCM Asset Management?
I'm watching football this coming Thanksgiving. There's really not a lot going on. I just got to monitor what's going on in current positions and make sure nothing too crazy happens if we do have some type of event. But with that, I think that it's really going to be – it's not a lot of movement this week, and I really wish they just have the market closed for weeks like this week and the week after Christmas. But I don't make the rules, and we'll figure out a way to prosper nonetheless.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the inertia is going against you, Uncle Mike. We're going to be open more, not less.
I think you're right.
So, unfortunately, the days of those grand holidays may be a thing of the past. All right, and last but certainly not least, Mr. Jacobson, what are you watching for the rest of this week over there at OX?
So in line with what Mike just said, I think it's going to be a thin week. Even though volumes were good today, I would be very careful if I'm short any premium in the weeklies, because I think it's going to be very thin Wednesday and Friday. Washington has gone home for Thanksgiving, which means the Yahoos won't be fighting, so the market could actually do well this period. So keeping an eye on Washington, and a little concerned about when they come back from vacation and continue the disarray. Other than that, I always look forward to Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday.
Interesting, sir. I cannot imagine why. Perhaps it has to do with all the succulent dishes that we have in store for us later this week. Good thing I have my annual checkup on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, because if it was the day after Thanksgiving, I think my blood work would look quite different. He'd say, what do you mean you're 75% tryptophan? How is that possible?
Yeah, vitamin D levels are not good.
All right, that is going to do it for the Around the Block segment. It's also going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But before we go, let me check in really quickly with each of my cohorts, my partners in crime, to see what they have cooking in their respective necks of the woods that may interest you. Starting off with you, Mr. G. What is cooking in the land of the pit?
I think I'm going to Chicago and talking with the two marks. Instead of the Twin Towers, we have the two marks. not quite as imposing or impressive, yet in their own way in the option land. They have tons of information. So we will be doing a seminar on, at least for my part, writing calls, buying puts, protected puts, some things like that. Maybe a little primer on insurance to help people basically, not too different from Mr. Tusa espouses on a weekly basis at least about, generating some theta, what we call, everybody here calls it, income, but it really isn't. It's theta because it's not always guaranteed. and protecting, seeing how to buy puts to protect against that type of position. So basically just a way to use options to help you manage an equity position in hopefully will be an intelligent way.
Yes, and if you too would like to join us, you don't have to come to Chicago. You can do it all virtually this time. So surf on over to theoptionsinsider.com/events or optionpit.com/events to learn more and to grab your seat because they are getting going. That made no sense. And grab your seat because they are going quite quickly. So, indeed, join us on December 7th. We'd love to see you. I know a lot of you guys listening have already signed up, so that's great. We want to see more of you. We want to see all of you guys who listen to this show and send in such great questions. Join us on December 7th. It's going to be a really fun event. Myself, Andrew, Mr. Sebastian, and perhaps even another surprise guest. You're going to get a ton of bang for your buck. December 7th, theoptionsinsider.com/events to learn more and claim your seat. All right, thank you for that, Mr. Giovinazzi. And now, Uncle Mike Tusaw, what is cooking in the land of RCM?
Well, we just came off the greatest webinar in the history of the planet with Mark Sebastian last week. If anyone wants a copy of that, go to our website at rcmaccess.com. You can download a copy of that. The webinar train is going to be run a little bit slow over the course of the next couple of weeks, but I will say this is my annual recommendation this time of year at all times. You should already be short pumpkin futures by now. Get long Christmas tree futures because Christmas is coming, and stay away from turkey because they have no future. That is all.
I like it, sir. I like it. Good advice as always. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Jacobson, what is cooking in the land of OX education? Are you, like everybody else, going to take the next month and a half kind of light on the education side?
Ironically not. And actually, I'm doing a rare live appearance on December 3rd in San Francisco. This is a Schwab event at the Fairmont Hotel. It's a free event. I'm going to be doing premium harvesting, income strategies, credit spreads. It's a free event. You can show up at the Fairmont. The event starts at 3 p.m. on the 3rd. Or you can go to schwab.com if you want to register for the event. But walk-ins are always welcome. This Wednesday, webinar I'll showcase our new streaming charts. We've done a series of enhancements to streaming charts, and for those of you who may be leaving work early on Wednesday or sitting home in expectation of Thanksgiving or helping the wife or the husband prepare, streaming charts on Wednesday. One other event I'll showcase, December 7th in Scottsdale, a live event, but again, the OX live events are also done virtually. Jimmy Ruzan, who's a former Group 1 market maker, worked with Andrew Giovinazzi at Group 1. Jimmy will be doing his all day in Scottsdale. Come to the site, optionsexpress.com. Free events. All the webinars are free. You can register on the site. And that's what's keeping us going for the next week or so.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Viceroy. A brave man out there at OX doing an event on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. That's a very determined audience you'll have for that one, I think. That's an impressive thing, sir. I salute you for defying the travel schedule and going forth. I like it. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of The Option Block. But before we go, let me thank all of you for downloading and streaming and subscribing to this program, for sending in such great questions. Keep it up, and we'll see you guys next time right here on The Option Block.
Become a part of The Option Block. Just visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/forum to post a question for the hosts. You can also submit questions to twitter.com/optionblock or leave a voicemail at 312-544-9356. Make it interesting and your question just might make it on the air. The Options Block is property of the Options Insider Incorporated. All rights reserved. The preceding program was a presentation of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com/radio or search for Options Insider Radio in iTunes.